Welcome to another episode of BC Spirits. I'm, of course, your host, Sean Sewell. This week is another one I did a week ago, with All Shelter Point, because they've got some great whiskies. They've got 5 in the lineup. I think they actually have 6, which I don't have one of them. But this week I decided to do one of my favorite old school distilleries, and I call it one of the OGs because they were one of the first, and that is Okanagan Spirits. So I've been fortunate enough that I've worked with Tyler over the years in various things. One stage, Clive sold the most taboo in the province, which was mental. That was, thank you very much, George Lamb. And various other things. And they have an amazing amount of product. You've seen some of their stuff in the liqueurs section, the Sea Buckthorn and the Huckleberry, which is mind-blowing. But this week we're doing whiskey, which they have a lot of whiskey. Being one of the oldest distilleries, of course they have a lot of whiskey. I remember stories of 40 Creek back in the day when Campari bought 40 Creek. They actually didn't really buy the distillery. They bought the fact that the Rick House was jam-packed full of whiskey, which could be released for years and years and years on end. And when you've been distilling for close to 20 years, I think these guys have been going for, I think it's close to 15, 20 years, of course you've got a lot of whiskey sitting around. And so they've got a lot of expressions, which are really fun. If you didn't notice from the Shelter Point episode, we've got an Isla cask finish, which is really smoky, smoke point, and the double barrel with the Quail's Gate. This week we're going to do the Okanagan Spirits. So let's kick it off, because I've got 7 whiskies in front of me. 2 which are really fun because it's a nice little comparison tasting. But the first up is their special limited edition final proof, which is their hopped. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I have seen hopped whiskies all over North America, from Corsair and different things. Basically, what they're doing is they're taking the genetic makeup of a beer and then distilling it, which is basically what you do when you're making whiskey. And so I've seen wheat beer whiskies and all these different things, hopped whiskies and stout whiskies and all this sort of stuff. So I'm always curious, and I'm always skeptical as well. I have tasted this one before, and I was surprised. That's why I'm starting it off. It's nice and floral and nice and light just to kick it off. It's amazing how funky on the nose it gets. Now, if you like your IPAs, I think this would be a wicked Boilermaker whiskey. A nice IPA with this. Super fragrant, that funky, borderline weedy sort of smell. On the palate, spicy, and then you finish off that really aromatic, really funky. It's a sort of layered, like floral hops, as well, that funky smell you get from a lot of beers. To be honest, I'm still not sold on hopped whiskies. They're just not something that I gravitate towards. But I know it's popular. I know also hop cider is really big too. Hop cider is not my thing either. But everybody's got their own taste. And so I think if this is a Boilermaker with a nice, I would say, I don't want to say Vancouver Brewery, because I'd be going against all my stuff for being Victoria born and, well, based. But I would go, honestly, the Punch Bowl from Russell's, one of my favorite IPAs. The Punch Bowl on this, as a Boilermaker, you got money. It's a very complimentary flavour. Next up, rye. Now, why do I like Canadian whiskey? I love Canadian whiskey because you can either use the rules of Canadian whiskey for good or bad. For good or evil. Depends on how you use the rules. And so a lot of distilleries use the rules for good. They have the opportunity to make these really fantastically complex rye whiskies, which Wiser's and the like on the East Coast have really started building out on that. Alberta Premium has really got on the boat now, Canadian Club as well. Some of the other guys, not so much. We won't name names on that one. But this is their rye. Now, the great thing with Okanagan Spirits is that being one of the first and biggest distilleries in the Okanagan, they get to really work directly with farmers. And so they really do that same sort of thing as Shelter Point does with their Montfort district whiskey, where they really know where the rye is coming from. It's all coming from the Okanagan. It's not coming from Alberta or anything like that. It's really coming from the Okanagan. And the guys can go out and actually look at the farm and see where the rye is grown. Now I'm expecting solid rye notes on this one. And it doesn't disappoint. This is sort of, this is a very fragrant, spicy, like a light rye bread sort of feel to it. I wouldn't say it's full on like that Lot 40 sort of heavy condensed rye sort of flavor profile, but that is it's a tasty little rye. I think there's a few other grains in there as well, but the rye is their flagship grain in that one. The spice is really nice, but it's almost like a fragrant rye, like a fragrant spicy rye, not a full-on like rye bread sort of feel to it. Next up is their bourbon. This is their bourbon style, obviously. There's a whole bunch of rules and stuff when it comes to calling something bourbon. So this is their corn-based and corn-heavy whiskey, which again, a lot of distillers in BC aren't doing. Like, I understand the single malt train is a big one. Get on the single malt train for sure, but I think the rules of Canadian whiskey, you have a lot of options to play around with, like really different mash bills and grains. We tasted the ancient grains a little while ago from Divine, same sort of deal. I think you've got a lot of room to play around with, which really, really helps build out this Canadian whiskey category. Ooh, solid caramel on the nose straight away. I like how Okanagan Spirits really allows the spirit to speak to itself. They don't add any caramels or anything like that. Each batch is slightly different, but not too crazy. When it comes into so many barrels, you can really bring it down to like a very finite change. But you don't get a lot of residual sweetness that you get from a lot of Canadian whiskies. That and the rye both don't get a lot of residual like fake sweetness, like when caramel's added and that sort of thing. It's clean. The finish is great. I'm wondering the alcohol content on this. 40%. It's for a corn with like for a bourbon style whiskey. You got I think there's a little bit of rye in the finish there too. So like you get this beautiful mouthfeel and texture of corn, and then it finishes up with like a little bit. I'm gonna say barley. I don't know the mash bills on these. I'm sure Tyler's gonna email me after this episode and tell me that I'm an idiot for not learning the mash bills. But I get a little bit of rye on the finish, like right up into my gums here. Like this is like this prickle, which is fantastic. So these are their Canadian style whiskies. We're going to get into their single malts now. So 7 whiskies in total, which is a substantial amount for a Saturday afternoon tasting for me. So next up, we've got the Laird of Fintry. Now, the cool thing is we've got 2 Laird of Fintries. We have Lot 5 from 2018, Lot 5 from 2018, and Lot 6 from 2019. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so the cool thing with this is Tyler actually told me the story. He said that, because they finished these in Quailsgate casks again, that in 2018 when he went up, well, not 2018 because they bottled way before that, they went up and got barrels and they'd already been like pressure washed out, ready for shipping. And he's like, no, I want the wine. And so you can tell from just the color difference. You can tell that on camera. This one was the pressure washed wine cask finish, and this one was the wet wine cask finish. So you can tell the difference straight away. If you didn't remember from the Shelter Point episode, I love wine casks. I wish that sherry was cheaper. I literally feel like if I opened up a sherry house in BC and literally just sold off the sherry as cooking sherry, I would have a solid business just selling sherry casks to the whiskey distillers that are open in BC right now. So the Laird of Fintry, I've loved Laird of Fintry since 2013. I want to say 2012. When I was still at Clive's, I entered the lottery. I got a bottle, and so I've been in love with Laird of Fintry for a really long time. I've always been a big fan of the single malt movement out of BC. But now we're starting to see some age. We're starting to see some really good aging properties and qualities coming out of these whiskies. They're not green anymore. They're not too underaged, like rushed to market or anything like that. They're really deep, complex whiskies, which I really, really love the fact that you're starting to see some real maturity in the distilling section of BC single malts. Next up, 2019. Straight away on the nose, you get that wine flavor profile straight away. I think this goes back really to, and you're going to see this more as we move forward with Okanagan Spirits and Shelter Point. I'm doing Odd Society in a couple of weeks, a few other things. You're starting to see with these different expressions that there's still a definite terroir specificness of a distillery, which is a fantastic movement, but that these distilleries are like, I'm not going to try and change every single whiskey to be exactly what I want it to be to replicate XYZ. It's all about being in that place, being in that time, being in that moment, being in that region. And I love the fact that these have this sort of like terroir-driven flavor profile. The red wine, of course, I think, in my personal opinion, trumps the classic. But you definitely get that much more, that beautiful texture of red wine, stewed raspberries and strawberries and that sort of thing. Next up, so Tyler Dick, who is the CEO and owner of one of the owners of Okanagan Spirits, goes to the Caribbean to surf once a year, twice a year, which is a great. He works so hard, I don't blame him for going surfing in the Caribbean. He's one of the biggest lobbyists for the Canadian craft distillers movement, which is massive for us. Well, it's something that's close to my heart because without BC Spirits, this wouldn't be really a big passion project for me. So next up is the Laird of Fintry Blue Label, which is rum barrel aged finished. These are Martinique barrels, I believe, and they get sent up directly from the Caribbean, from the Martinique, whole. So, because we don't have any coopers in BC anymore, we used to many years ago. They closed down, which is an absolute shame because with how many wineries and distilleries and breweries we have now, having a cooper here in BC would be intuitive, I suppose. So these get shipped up whole, which is an expensive thing. So they get plastic wrapped, put onto a container, shipped up, which is an expensive thing because the barrel is quite substantial. Barrel's as big as my desk, so you can imagine the shipping. It's lightish, but like it's a big barrel. So this is finished in rum barrels. To be honest, again, I haven't never been a big fan of rum finishes and whiskies. There's been the odd one, Balveni's Caribbean and that sort of thing, that have like caught my eye. But this one definitely fits into a section which I really love. There's beautiful caramelized sugar. On the nose, again, like if you know Martinique rums well enough, you'll understand where I'm coming from, the little funk on the nose. But it just adds. So the juice is the same that goes in the Laird of Fintry. Obviously, this gets finished off in thing. This gets moved over to rum barrels, and so you get a different color and different like it's definitely that sweet molassesy sugar sort of finish, burnt sugar sort of flavor profile, but not in a bad way. Like the not the cloying sweetness of burnt sugar, but like just you get that sort of beautiful caramelized burnt sugar flavor profile. This is one of my like nice little keepers. Go out and get it because they do a beautiful little 3-pack at the distillery that you can get the Laird of Fintry, the rum barrel finished, and the Cask Strength. So next up is the Cask Strength Laird of Fintry, the black label. So this one is 56% alcohol, which is substantial. So this comes straight out of the barrel, the same as the Quail's Gate finish. At 56% and strong, but it won't knock your socks off. I think it's a fantastic little whiskey for the Cask Strength category, which isn't huge in BC yet. We tasted the Cask Strength, which wasn't of a single malt from Shelter Point the other day, but this is a Cask Strength. It's a fantastic little sipper. Take it over to your friend's house and enjoy it neat with a splash of water. But really, Okanagan Spirits has been making some wicked whiskies for the last couple of years. Again, the maturation of whiskey culture in BC has become prolific, and I think we've got some great stuff out there. Go out and find some of these bottles. Go to the distillery. Check out Vernon and Kelowna. They have they have a small distillery in Kelowna, a bigger distillery in Vernon. Go check them out. Buy yourself some whiskies from Okanagan Spirits. Take them over to your friend's house and shock them that BC craft spirits and whiskey are fantastic. Thank you very much, guys, for the support. As you can see, I'm wearing BC Spirit swag. Go to the website, pick up some swag, great Christmas presents, and thanks for the support. I'll see you next week. Bye.